Okay, so we're into week 5 now, and as I explained, what I'm trying to do from week 4 into week 7 is teach you how to use WordPress locally on your machine, so you don't need to have a remote host, you don't need to pay for hosting, how to set it up, get it running, and start adding content to a site and doing a variety of little things within the WordPress dashboard. We're not going to do anything heavy duty. And then by the end of week 6, you should be comfortable just going to the dashboard, logging in, doing some stuff, working on your WordPress site. You should all have little sites. They should all look pretty much the same. Little sites, whatever. They're just WordPress sites, okay? They're little in terms of content because we're not going to sit here in class and start generating, essays worth of content, which is something that you may want to do on your own website. Content is still king. They say it isn't, and search engines use a variety of things to rate websites in terms of how they will rank on the SERP. When you get to the search engine results page, speed has a lot to do with it. Direct matches within the content, and the quantity of matches has a lot to do with it, but the content is still going to be one of the most important things. It may not be the most important. Google actually has loading speed near the top now, but they change the way their sites rank, the sites in the SERP all the time. So you guys know what I mean by SERP, right? The search engine results page. So now that we have WordPress up and running, we've used a utility in our computer called XAMPP. XAMPP will act as a server. We installed XAMPP, we troubleshot, however you say it. We got through some stuff having to do with Mac users, and we got everything working. And following that, we went in and installed WordPress. Installed meaning that we're basically just connecting a full installation, like a folder for WordPress, a root directory, to the database that we set up for it. So just to review quickly what's going on here, and every time now when you go back to your computer, sorry, my desktop really jams together when I shrink my resolution, but you have to pull up the XAMPP control panel and make sure that it's turned on. So you don't have to leave this on when you're not using XAMPP to work on your WordPress sites. Okay, I turn mine off because it does take up like a little bit of space on your computer. There's no reason to have it left on. So I'm going to start Apache and MySQL. Those are the two services that always need to be running to do what we're going to do in here. The FileZilla service does not have to be running. Okay, but it's good that if it does work, because then when we download FileZilla, you're not going to have any trouble with it. This is something we'll get into later. I talk about it a bit today in our lecture. But first things first, make sure your control panel is up and running, and make sure these two main services are started. On a Mac, it does look a little bit different. I don't think we need to refer back to the week 4 notes. You just need to look for that little gear icon on your Mac. Okay, that will get you into that XAMPP control panel, and then you can start those services. I guess we could show that very quickly. I think I have them sitting here on the desktop anyway. So on your Mac, it does look a little bit different. It looks like this. Okay, if you recall. All right, and once you get that control panel up, you go to Manage Servers, and you hit Start on all the servers. You can run all 3 on your Mac. You can run the FileZilla one too. And if any of you on your Mac are having trouble finding your application folder and you still haven't installed WordPress, the easiest way to do that would be to go right to it from the control panel. Okay, and the way to get to that control panel again is to pull up that little gear icon. When you search for XAMPP in your computer, you should be able to find it. So in the first couple minutes here, make sure your XAMPP is up and running, because if it isn't, that's why WordPress isn't going to work when we try and access it. Okay, so this is what we're going to cover in here in week 5. We're probably not going to get through all of these notes today. I'm gonna at this point, because I want to make sure when we get to the WordPress test in week 7, there are no issues with people having their computers actually doing the things that need to be done for you to be able to run a WordPress site using XAMPP. That has to be a given. And if that's a given, then you should be able to do a new WordPress installation with a different folder that you'll give a different name, and set up a site for the test with a bunch of different stuff in it. And if my students are watching this, you're in the online class, these lectures will be a bit shorter, but keep in mind this is still a 4-hour course, and that the same goes for you guys. When I give you this lab time, it's so that we can go through this stuff and make sure everything's working. What happened last year, I was giving students this lab time, and they said everything was fine, but then we got to the test and everything was not fine. And a lot of students had a lot of problems, and that's, guys, that is on you if we get to week 7 and things aren't working, okay? You have to make sure that stuff is up and running now. All right, so today, as we're going through this, I'm only going to get about halfway through these notes, and then I'm going to give you guys some extra time to work with me. So if things aren't up and running, or you have questions, or you want to start working on your own site, you want help with anything like that, you ask me. If you're in the online class, you go to the chat room on Sunday and you ask me these questions. Okay, I'm there for, or you email me. Either way is fine. So today we're going to talk about the directory structure, okay, of our file server, like a file server meaning our root directory that provides all these files for us in WordPress. I'm actually going to take that out. It's kind of a confusing term. I'm just going to leave it at directory structure. When I upload these notes, they'll be updated. WordPress software installation, which we already did. I'm just going to quickly go through the process. Like, I'm not going to do it again. I'm just going to show you what we did and what should be working now. And then we're going to actually go into WordPress and start looking at the features. We're going to set up a different theme. Okay, each year we're going to be using different themes. It might not be the same exact theme that we're using in this video. You could use the same theme as we do in the video. It's up to you guys. Configuring settings for the first time, we'll probably get to about there. Because when we go to install the theme, most of my Mac users are going to have issues. And these are issues that I was able to troubleshoot last semester when we first started using WordPress, and I do have the fixes in here. Okay, so first thing I'm going to talk about as I'm showing you the directory structure and the WordPress installation and how it was set up is remote versus local. From the get-go, I want to make sure you guys understand this. So everybody look up here. Don't be doing stuff right now, okay? If your WordPress isn't working, we're going to have to deal with that later. Just look up here. You should all have, if you follow the instructions. If you haven't, you still have lots of time to do that, okay, before we have to take the test, and you need to know how to do that. On your main hard drive or in your applications folder in your Mac, wherever you put it in your Mac, you should have a folder called XAMPP. If you go into that folder, okay, you will have another folder called htdocs, and inside of that folder, there is a folder called WordPress. This was an installation that we did in our last class. There's also another folder inside of htdocs called XAMPP. And I know a lot of Mac users have no idea where their folders are, so they always search for everything. So if you've done this and for some reason you couldn't find the htdocs folder, that's why you were in the wrong XAMPP folder. Okay, this doesn't have htdocs in it. You want to make sure you're in the main XAMPP folder. So this here is a root directory. We all left it named WordPress because then we'd all have the same thing and it would be easier to work together on this. This could be named anything you want it to be, okay? If this was a website for your pet shop, it could be called Jordan's Pet Stop or something. Now, as soon as I do that, because I've already connected WordPress to this root directory using a database and it's set up all these connections based on that folder, it's not going to work anymore. Okay, I've changed the root directory path, and this can be resolved. But generally, you don't do this. You do all this at the beginning. Okay, you decide what you're making and how it's set up, and you call it that, and then everything else you do is going to be inside the dashboard in WordPress. So what we did here was we set up a WordPress installation locally. We installed XAMPP. XAMPP is acting for us as if it's GoDaddy. Okay, so I'm going to go here to GoDaddy, and I'm going to show you the difference between the two. This is my GoDaddy account. Okay, one of them. If I log in here, okay, I'm going to have a variety of things I can go to. So every hosting company has like a platform. They have a bit of a dashboard, just like WordPress, right? Everybody's got a dashboard where you go in and you can access all the things you're dealing with. I have a bunch of domains. I also have web hosting, right? And the hosting that I use for my WordPress sites is called cPanel hosting. It's just what GoDaddy calls it. So I go in here to manage, okay? And the way it worked in GoDaddy, I went down here and I clicked on WordPress. There was an icon for it. I clicked on it, okay? It shows me all of the WordPress applications I have set up already. These are all WordPress sites, okay? And if I want to install it, I can go from, where did it go? WordPress. So Installatron will install it for me. I'm not going to do this because then I'm just going to have this extra WordPress site in there, but I literally just click on WordPress and it goes. It's that simple. So what's happening in the background when I do that is what we did when we connected the WP config file to our database. And it's also making the database in the background. So in the background in GoDaddy, as soon as I click to make a WordPress site, here, I should just, you know what, I'll start it. I'm not going to do the whole thing. I'll start it. And then I'll just stop in the middle of it because I don't need an extra WordPress site installed. See where it says install this application? And this is how simple. I'm showing you GoDaddy. Most of these hosting platforms will be just like this. So I go in here, I go to my hosting, it has this little WordPress icon. I click WordPress. Right from here, I go install this application. So I go here. And it asks me, what domain am I going to connect to this? So I should have a domain already purchased and associated with my hosting account. And these domains that you buy will automatically be associated with the hosting account if you buy them from the same company. Because most hosting companies are registrars. And since I already taught you guys all this stuff, you know exactly what I mean, right? A registrar is what? Somebody who can sell a domain, right? And why would you not go buy a domain with a company that also offers hosting? Because that way you don't have to change the name servers. Because the name server is that specific identification that connects the hosting company to the files, or to the domain, sorry. It'll tell the hosting company where to find that name, that domain name. So GoDaddy will set that up for you automatically if you buy a domain from them. If you buy a domain from somebody else and have hosting with GoDaddy, you have to change the name servers. It's just kind of annoying. And it's not something I even teach. It's pretty simple. You just find name servers. What is that? Hang on a sec. Okay, so for right now, we're not doing anything. I just want to make sure you guys understand this, okay? So we don't have this when we set it up locally on our machine. I mean, look at all these domains I have access to, right? Because these are domains I purchased and are set up in my GoDaddy account. So I set it up here. If I want to set it up here and then choose to have it in a separate folder, like sometimes you want to use WordPress just as a blog to add on to an existing website, you could have it in mrmikesloan.com/blog. Like, for example, I set up a WordPress site at 123myproperty.com, okay, which is my main domain, which is a website that I'm currently redoing. And if I go to the end of that and I go to 29 main, this is a WordPress site. So the domain actually is in a subfolder of the main root directory for that domain. Everything functions just like a normal website. Like, there's nothing about it that wouldn't work the same exact way. So when you're setting it up, that's the time when you want to decide exactly where you want it to be. If you have one domain and WordPress is going to be your main website, you just take this off and make it the domain. You guys get that? Because this would be the folder that it's in. So this one is in a folder called 29 main, right? Instead of being the primary website at 123myproperty.com, which is actually this website. So you can have one domain and have a bunch of websites set up at it. Doesn't matter. If it's fine. But I will be working on my main site when I find time. Currently, I'm trying to teach you guys, which is more important. So back to here, you can do the same type of things you set up. So some of this has to do with the database, right? This has to do with the version of WordPress. It'll always default to the newest one. Language English. I accept the terms and agreement. Automatic updates. Okay, so this is going to be your username and password for WordPress. You can make it up right now. And then you can give the website a title and a tagline when you're setting it up. And then actually you don't do the database stuff in here. It's advanced. If you want to go to database management, you can go let me manage these settings, and it will show you some stuff that has to do with the database. But using GoDaddy, I've never actually done that. So it mainly is associated with the WordPress site itself. Whereas when we installed this on our machine, we just got all the default values that you get for Word. It'll say, you know, this is another WordPress site. I forget what it says. Well, hello world is the first thing it always says when you set up a WordPress site. So it'll have all those things in there automatically. And just another WordPress site. That's what it says. So you can change that ahead of time when you're setting up with a hosting company. Now keep in mind, you don't have to launch the whole site when you set it up. You can go in then and just say under construction and not publish the stuff you're working on. But the reason I like you guys to have the skill of being able to do this on your own computer is, number one, you don't have to pay for this, GoDaddy. But number two, once you do this, it's online, okay? And then you have to pay attention to what you're doing and not publish stuff. Just have it set to draft. Otherwise, it goes to the web and people can see it while you're making it. If you make it locally on your machine, like we're doing here with XAMPP, it just stays on your machine until you migrate it to GoDaddy, which is something we're going to do after the test. We're going to try migration. But this is not in this video. So this is GoDaddy. Everything that happens when I go down here and click install, it goes clink, 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 clink. It takes about 30 seconds. It creates a database. Okay, it sets the database with the proper language settings, just like we did in XAMPP. So when I click install, GoDaddy is doing that. So if I go to localhost here, okay, and this should work if you have XAMPP turned on, and I go to phpMyAdmin, okay, and I go to databases, and then I go make a new one. That's what's happening in the background with GoDaddy while I'm doing this, okay? And then additionally, as soon as it makes the database for me on my behalf, it goes to the wp-config.sample file, copies it, calls it wp-config, okay? And with the wp-config file, it puts in the settings that it already has for the database, because a live site is not going to have a blank password. As I taught you guys the first time we set this up, we're using the root user, which has no password. That way you can't ever be cut off from your database working locally on my machine. It's just on your machine. It's just a better way to do it, okay? So GoDaddy will put that stuff in there, and literally within 30 seconds, everything we learned how to do in our last class, it's all just done when you hit that install button right there. So yeah, it's easier, it's better. I have somebody in my class right now that's used WordPress a ton, and they were totally lost with all this XAMPP stuff because they're like, what is this? Like, what is all this nonsense? I usually just click a button and I can set up a new site. And that's totally true. But the site's automatically live. You can't have it in like its testing phase. You can't set up a site for a client that way and then migrate it quite as easily. You can still migrate a site from your GoDaddy account to another GoDaddy account or to another hosting company. You can just export it and get it out of there. It gets a bit tricky, but the main things that need to change are the database name and password and the username for the database. Because that if you're going to another hosting company, it will have all that stuff, but it will have to use a different database. So essentially what you do is you make a blank database and you import the existing one into it. So this is all going to come later. For right now, I just wanted you guys to understand that what we're doing with XAMPP is pretty much the same thing you do when you go and use a remote host and click install. You're just doing it for free, and you're keeping it local on your machine. You guys get that? Okay, here, check this out too. The last thing I was going to show you. Okay, in GoDaddy, so in my cPanel hosting panel. Okay, there's all these different things I can go into. I can go right into my files and I can see the root directories for my different websites. And this is slow. Go. Okay, so the file manager will show me all my files as if it's a computer, right? It's the same setup. And I can transfer files back and forth using FTP, which we will learn about. Here, phpMyAdmin. When I click on this, come on. This looks almost identical to XAMPP. Click on databases. It's a little different. Okay? It's almost identical. Now, it doesn't want you going into here and creating new databases. You create a database in the hosting platform and then it would appear here. But doesn't that look exactly like XAMPP? Okay, so XAMPP is your server. XAMPP is your GoDaddy for the next several weeks. After the test, if you want to use a hosting company, I will recommend I get nothing out of this from GoDaddy, by the way. I just think they offer the best support. It's the easiest to use, and they do have nice packages. If you're just going to make one WordPress site, they have a pretty cheap, affordable thing you can have set up for just a few months if you want to just use it for my class. If not, you keep using XAMPP, and you can do your final project that way. Nobody's required to go live. It's just something that I encourage because I think it makes, what the hell, why not make a website and put it online, right? And then you got one ready to go. You will need a credit card, okay? If you don't have a credit card, it will take PayPal, because if you have PayPal set up through your banking, even if you don't have a credit card, you can PayPal GoDaddy. So and I think they even take debit. So there are ways to do it, but I just wanted to show you that. So this is the PHPMyAdmin panel in GoDaddy. This is the PHPMyAdmin panel in XAMPP, pretty much identical. Okay, so I don't want you guys to feel like I'm not teaching you what's really going on in the real world. I'm teaching you that. I've just taught you how to keep it local on your machine for the time being. Right? So that was my little spiel on remote versus local. Any questions? Seriously, you guys are good on that. You get that. Okay, XAMPP is what? Remote or local? Local. Somebody said remote. Local. GoDaddy is remote. Julia.
My skill don't work right now. I'd like to ask what can I do?
We'll pause and get into that in a minute when we get there. No, not right now. Just wait a few more. Wait till we get to the slide where the Mac users have to fix their stuff, and then I'll come look at your computer. Generally at this point, we would use FileZilla if we had a remote host. And if we had a WordPress install, we'd FTP it up there. Now, even at this point, hardly any hosting company would make you do that. WordPress, it's just all there. You don't really have to FTP anything. If you had like an entire directory full of photographs and a bunch of really like large file-sized videos and stuff like that you're going to use in your site, then yeah, you would want to use FileZilla to move those into the root directory in your remote server. Because we're doing all this stuff locally, we don't have to do any of that. Okay? So the WordPress installation, which we already did, okay, this was already done the other day. If your XAMPP is turned on and everything is working fine, you should be able to go to localhost/WordPress, and you should all see the same exact thing, because when we all downloaded the same version of WordPress, you guys might have put something a little different in there, but this is what the site looks like as is. Now, this does not look like a great website, right? It's pretty stark. It's just gray and white with some black text, but that's how it starts, bare bones, right? And we'll go in and start to change things around a bit. We'll find a theme and try the theme out and do some different stuff with it. Okay, so this is our WordPress site. Do you remember how to log into your WordPress site? For sure? wp-login.php. Did you save your username and password in a text file? Because now you need to put in your username and password. Okay? And then you're into your site and you're in the dashboard. This is where I want everyone to be. Okay? So when I say continue the WordPress installation, this is assuming that in our previous lecture, you put this folder in here, you went into the folder, you took wp-config-sample, you made a copy of it, named it wp-config, you went in there, but that's already open, and you changed these first three things. Those are the only three things you had to change. You saved the file, and by doing that, you were connecting it to the database that you'd already created, okay, in localhost. So it was a series of steps that we've already gone through in a previous lecture. And I know saying you should have already done this in like 30 seconds for something that took us like 45 minutes is not really fair. But if you weren't in class, you need to go back to the videos from the previous class, or if you're online and you're just jumping ahead, everything's got to be done in sequence. So in the week 4.2 video, we set all this stuff up. You need to go back and do that. And there's your database, and this is what's connected to your WordPress install, and that is how it's working. Okay, right here. Now, everyone on a Mac should have this working, assuming you got your XAMPP turned back on. Okay, good. Where we're going to go next is we're going to navigate. Now, it says navigate in your browser to localhost/WordPress or 127.0.0.1/WordPress. So that is actually the specific IP address of localhost. So it still goes back to the same exact place. See, so I was just demonstrating to you, doesn't matter where you go. I would always use localhost, but that's like the IP address. Remember how I told you there's an IP address behind every domain? I mean, technically, the domain is localhost. 127.0.0.1 is the actual IP address. So there's still an IP address even though it's local on your machine. Okay, but I want you guys logged in. So if you go back to the WordPress site, here's one of your first really simple lessons in WordPress. As long as you're logged in a browser, you can go to the site by going right to the domain or previewing a page or doing something like that. You should still see this black bar across the top that allows you to get back into the dashboard, like that. Okay, so that was just a quick lesson in the difference between localhost and the actual IP address. As I taught when we went through all that terminology, they are one and the same. Okay, but this should work. If it didn't work, you haven't done some stuff. Now, last thing, which isn't actually in the notes, it was in the previous notes. In case you were one of the students that had to use a different port. So my port here is 80, and this would only be on a PC. Nobody on a Mac has had to change the port yet. I have yet to see anybody have to do that. So on a PC, if you had to change ports to get it to work, you can't access this by just going to localhost. You would have to go to localhost :8080 in order to get to the same place, the same places, I should say, that we're going to. Okay, now I don't think anyone in this particular section has done that, or in my online section right now, but somebody has, okay. But were you already doing that, going to 8080? Yeah. Everything's working fine?
Yes.
Good, perfect, okay. So if anybody else has that issue, or you haven't done it yet and you go to install and you have to change ports, that's why. This would only come up on a PC. So I think that's everything I wanted to cover up to the point we're going to start playing with WordPress. So we're going to take about 5 minutes here. I'm going to pause the video so you won't have the 5 minutes, but we're going to take about 5 minutes, and I'm just going to make sure there's a couple people on PCs that need some help. So I say down here, this is the root directory. So when we're accessing this, remember when I told you how index is the one page that comes up automatically in an HTML site? With a PHP site, which is what WordPress is using, there is no index.html. When we go here, it just loads up what is considered to be the main or home page as identified in WordPress, which we are also going to learn today. Okay, so everybody should be here and then log in. So now is the time where if you forgot your username or password, you go to wplogin.php. If you don't remember what it is, you got to figure it out. If you can't figure it out, ask me. I'll come over and pull it up for you in XAMPP. It's in XAMPP. It won't email it to you, okay, because it's local. You're going to have to get it out of XAMPP. All right, let's make sure everybody's working. So now that we're all logged in, and we all know how to log in, and this link will always be in your notes. It's wp-login.php every time. And this should work in any browser on your computer. It doesn't really matter, okay? You're going to use that username and password that you used to set up your WordPress site. This is not the same as the database username and password. And even with a remote host like GoDaddy, you're going to have a database username and password and the username and password for WordPress. They're not one and the same. And you really hardly ever need to deal with your database username and password. The only reason you ever need that is for the WP config file. And because with a remote host it does it for you, you don't even need it then. Here we do, because we're using XAMPP. So from the dashboard's homepage, you can quickly access your site's content and get glimpses into other areas of the WordPress community. So there's all sorts of stuff you can do in here. And that's for the first class in the dashboard. We're just going to kind of explore around a little bit. The dashboard screen presents information in blocks called modules. So by default, WordPress will have at a glance, activity, quick draft, WordPress news, and welcome automatically every time you get WordPress and install it. So when you're just on dashboard, what they're talking about are these things I never use this stuff, but it's a quick way to access things within the dashboard, especially if you're just learning, because you can go here and write your first blog post. You can add an about page. You can look at how your site looks right now. A lot of students get themes where they're not going to be allowing comments because it just doesn't make sense for what they're doing. So you can turn comments on and off, turn comments on or off. This is all done in settings. So at a glance shows you kind of what you have in your site. There's the activity. There's quick draft. Okay, that's to post. So a lot of this is still heavily blog driven. But when you install a theme, which is a pre-designed website sort of template, it might change how this front page of the dashboard actually looks. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on that stuff. I'm actually going to get into some more of the other stuff and talk about how it works. So screen options are a big deal, and a lot of people have been using WordPress for months and they don't even notice that these are there. So whenever you go to create a post, create a page, import a picture, whatever you're doing in WordPress, there's this little thing up at the top that reads screen options. and it will show you how to turn on or off. They're just checkboxes. It will enable you to turn on or off all the different things that you can have up on that screen. So for example, and this is a good example that I'll show you because we just talked about the comments on or off thing. Most people don't want comments on pages. So if you go here, there is a sample page. Okay, and if you go to edit the sample page, you can see here that I have some content in it. I can update it when I change it. Okay, if I scroll down, there's really nothing else below that. If I go to screen options, there's all this stuff there that I can turn on or off. So if I check discussion, for example, and then scroll down, now I can turn comments on or off on this page. So a lot of the stuff, and this is how WordPress has worked for a long time. People are like, well, why don't they just have all that stuff up for us? I mean, we might need to use it, we might not. Well, that's the point. You might not. So why have all that stuff there, like busying up the page when you don't need it? So screen options, it's an important thing to understand that you can turn these things on and off. And there's discussions there, allow comments. Sure, I'll let people comment on this page, but maybe, no, it's a page, maybe I don't want to. But I couldn't do that if I didn't have that turned on. Okay? Comments itself will show you any comments that are made, all right, which you have none yet, obviously. Author will show you who was logged in and made it. The slug is the actual domain, the URL for the page. So it's coming up as sample page, but you can name the page one thing, which goes into the title. So that's technically the page title that we learned in the web workshop. And you can actually have the URL come up as something else. So if the name is really long, maybe you can shorten it a bit and put a more compact keyword phrase in as the URL. Now, some of the optimization plugins don't like that, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So that's an important thing to understand is screen options. And it's not just when you're making a page. If I were to go to make a post or something like that, these screen options would, the little thing in the right corner is always there to show you what to have on or off on the screen. Okay? Next slide. Expanding, collapsing, rearranging modules. So each module can be expanded or contracted by clicking on it. So pertaining to the slide I just had up here, when you go to the main dashboard, past the top item, which is fixed to be there, when you hover over these other ones, you can shift their placement against the other items in the dashboard and expand and contract. That's what they were talking about on that slide, so hovering over and moving them around with your mouse. And if you're working on a page, for example, from the menu items here, you go into page, whatever's in this space, not the black menu over here, but within the dashboard space, most of these things, like down here, if you hover over these modules, you can move them around and shift them around. And you can see some of these we turned on using the screen options thing. So now they're there, and now we can actually move them around. So that's modules, and that's what the slide is talking about with moving them all around. You can also, I'm kind of struggling with this one because I know I've done it before, and it might have come with a theme, and that's probably why I'm having trouble with it. But these menu items, which technically in WordPress they don't call these modules. I still think it's like kind of like Fanch Online. Like these look like modules to me with submenus. But I thought you could move these around, but I can't appear to be able to do that. I know there's a way to do it. So now I'm going to jump back into my classroom lecture, asking the question, how would you figure this out? Right? Because this is something that I know you can do. You can move these menu items and shift them around and rearrange how your menu works, where things are placed. And that's kind of good for people that get really into this because maybe they don't want all these in this exact place, right? You'll see I just added a plugin too. We'll get to that in the next lecture. I was just testing some things out, so ignore that there. But yeah, so that's what that slide is making a reference to, just moving these modules around, contracting, expanding, stuff like that, which is nice that you have that flexibility within the dashboard. What do you think we should do if we're using WordPress? This is very early on. We just started using WordPress. What was one of the things they talked about with us in those initial notes? Read about it, learn about it, take some time to kind of absorb things about WordPress, learn about what it really is. Where were we doing that? What website did I go to learn about WordPress? Remember that? Good. What if I went there and said, rearranging dashboard modules? I wonder what would come up. Personalizing the view of your dashboard. Dashboard screen. Here, I can't drag anything in the admin area. Yep, that's my problem. So this is great. This, you know what? I'm not that upset that this happened in the middle of a lecture, because these are the kind of little things you might run into. And if something worked before and then you went to go and try it like a few months later and it didn't work, because that's the last time I did that, was probably a few months ago. I don't tend to rearrange my dashboard that much. Let's see what this says. I have the same problem. This doesn't work for me. Okay, before we move on to the next slide, since we've been kind of exploring the menus and looking around, I'm just going to go into one quick spot here just to give you guys a taste of some of the things you can do and how easily you'll be able to change things on a WordPress site. We're going to go Themes, Customize. Under Appearance, if I go hover over it, that's where I can change the theme, which is the overall template for my website. That's where I can customize things, like change the CSS. In Customize, it usually goes to a page like this, where it depends on your theme, because themes can actually change the dashboard, and you will get comfortable with this over time. But here you can change the colors of the site. Like if I want to go and make the site a little bit different there, I can change the header and sidebar text color to red, save and publish, and then when I go to the site, it'll be in red. That's how fast the changes will come up. So that's actually changing the CSS in the background for me. And that's under Appearance, Customize. So you can also get to customize directly from here. Upon a fresh WordPress install, we need to now configure WordPress. So we've already done all this stuff. I just left this slide in there to make sure that the Mac people would be able to find this. Okay. Actually, this slide should be up here, because we want to make sure that everything is sort of, I think I put it down there because that's where I was going to stop lecturing. But expanding, recollapsing, now restart all XAMPP services. Yeah, this was just my little, we already did this, so I'm putting it up at the beginning. Starting and stopping XAMPP and making sure you guys are comfortable with that. Okay, so using the theme editor and the plugin editor, WordPress contains built-in editors that allow you to edit the theme files directly. Let's get into the theme first, okay? Sorry, I jumped ahead a little bit there. So here's where we're going to stop, and this is where I want to make sure you guys are all comfortable with this, and you're going to be able to pick a theme and start playing around with it, and then we'll do some more stuff to it next class. So you don't have to use the theme that I'm going to use today when you're just playing around with it. This is your time to experiment, but you may want to make sure that you get the theme that I pick with you, so that when we start next class doing demonstration type stuff, you'll be in the same place as me. So in the dashboard, okay, we're going to go to Appearance, Themes. Now themes need to be explained, because every WordPress install, if you get it directly from WordPress, will come with 3 themes. There's standard WordPress themes, and it usually goes by year. Now that we're into 2015, you have the 13, the 14, and 2015 theme. I'm actually gonna go to the 2014 theme and click on it and then activate. You guys can do the same thing. Okay? Now, if I go back to the site and look at it, you're going to see that it's changed. Okay, the content is all still there, the raw content. But behind that, you have changed the skin or the look and feel of the website, like literally as fast as you can snap your fingers. Now, because themes can be customized, you have to be very careful with this, because you might end up doing all this work to a theme and then saying, oh, you know, this one isn't working, I'm just going to switch themes. And then you realize, wait, nothing in this theme is set up the way I want it to be. That took me a lot of work. So you can just revert back to the other theme. As long as you don't uninstall those files, all the changes you made to them should still be in there. So I'm not saying that you're going to use WordPress and then switch themes every week just to make your website look different. In fact, that would be a very negative thing to do for marketing, because people on the web like consistency. They like to come back and see things looking the same way. In fact, when people on the web change their logos, when big players like Amazon and eBay have sort of changed the look and feel of their sites, they do it little bits at a time. It's really neat if you're actually paying attention when they're doing it. I always miss it, but logos do change, and it happens bit by bit. I mean, then people say, well, look what Google does. They're totally breaking the mold because they just change their logo every day, and on Halloween we'll get this really, but it's still the same font type, right? It's still the same sort of setup in terms of how the text logo works. So themes, don't go and change them like constantly, okay? That's not the point. The point is to find a theme that works well for the content that you want to put into a website. So technically, this is where the project plan comes in. But because of the way this course works, I want to make sure you're all comfortable with WordPress before we start talking about your final project. But in the real world, you would want to spend anywhere from weeks to months to 10 minutes. It could be like either or, where you sit down and you sort of map out what you're going to have on a website. That's called an information architecture, so that you know basically where you want your main menu items to be, how many of them you're going to have, what they're going to be, if you're going to have a sidebar navigation area, whether you'll use it for navigating through your blog posts, whether or not you're even going to have a blog. Maybe you'll have a blog, but it'll be called news. Like, there's all different kinds of things to think about when you're setting up a website. For the time being, up until the test, we're just going to pick a theme and just set it up. But that's how you really should be doing it. So it was as easy as that, switching to the 2014 theme. Okay, now I'm going to show you where the themes are. Look up here again. I want you guys to watch this. If you go to the root directory, which is where? Tell me what folder to go to. XAMPP, good. Now I go to htdocs, very good. And now in here I could have like 10 WordPress sites. Which site am I working on right now? Yeah, it's actually just called WordPress. Only for the sake of this demonstration did we all leave it named WordPress. Very rarely would you actually set up a WordPress site and leave the root directory named WordPress. You'd name it relative to, you'd name it about like associated, you would, I can't talk tonight. You would associate the name of the root directory with the content of the website, right? This is just a demo for WordPress, so we left it named WordPress. We go in there. In WP content, which is one of the folders we're going to look at today, there's a folder called themes. In themes, I have 2015, 2014, 2013. Let's say I decide, because I was paying attention to Mike when he first started talking about WordPress, that I know I'm not going to use the 2013 theme, and it's just taking up space in my site. I'm going to go to the dashboard and go to themes, and I'm going to go over here and click on it, and after I click on it, I'm going to hit delete. This will remove the theme from my root directory. It will also remove it from the WordPress dashboard, and overall, having less crap in your WordPress site means it's going to run better. If I go back to that same folder now, it's gone. So the dashboard, see, no more 2013 theme. So the dashboard operates by altering your root directory, the contents of the root directory. When you put themes in and take themes out, it manages all that stuff for you. Remember I told you in the web workshop you'd be okay, it's going to manage all these files. Having said that, you still need to pay attention to what you're doing, but you could have also gone in, let's say I don't want to use the 2015 theme either. And I know I don't, whatever. I can go manually into the theme directory, which is right here in WP content, delete the entire folder. And when I go back to the theme pages, the theme page in WordPress, this is my only theme now. It works both ways. So it's, guys, get this through your heads. It's just a freaking folder full of files. That's all a website ever is. The WordPress version of a website, however, has a lot more files because it runs as a database. So there's a lot of stuff happening. Having said that, it was not that hard for me to go in here and find themes and just clean it up, right? And it's just as easy to do in the dashboard. Now, let's pick a theme that we'll play with together in our next class. Let's go to themes. Okay, I'm here. Add new. Okay, so add new. When you click Add New, it will take you to a collection of themes. They're categorized. You can actually use the feature filter to figure out what you want. There's colors. There's different types of layouts. Let's go with like a 3-column thing. Okay, we'll come up with some content for it later. We're just messing around now. And let's apply and see what it shows us for 3 columns. So there's a bunch of options here. So I like this because it's like it's got this top part, and then you can have like news, this just in, and then like new products. Okay, so news, new products, and then reviews or something. If you had like a pet store, that was the example I brought up earlier. That's more of a graphical one. We don't need to get into that yet. That looks kind of cool. I don't know. Just grab it and install it, right? So I'm going to take the Luna theme and put it in, and this is what you do when you're kind of experimenting with themes. Okay, I'm going to take the Luna theme and I'm going to put it in there and see what I can do with it. So if you guys want to do the same theme as me, which you should because this is the one that we'll use in class, just search Luna. If someone's given you the name of it, it's easy enough to find. Install. Unpacking. Activate. It becomes your theme. That's how long it takes. Mac users, try that please. Okay? There's a lot of you in here. I need you to try that and see if it works. If it doesn't, it's because of security settings. It's because of file permission errors. It's going to be permissions. It's trying to put stuff in folders that your Mac does not want some random program accessing. How many people have a Mac and had it work? Okay, that was easy. Okay, so that's installing a theme. Before I go off for the Mac fixes, I'm almost there. You guys are gonna, if you get into this, you're gonna find there's a few pretty solid websites for themes. Theme Forest is one of them. Okay, I'll put links in FOL after the test. Okay, we don't need to be getting into all this now. So when you download a theme that you're paying for, it's still just as easy to install. You'll download it, it'll come zipped, and you'll unzip it on your desktop, and you can do one of two things. If you have the theme, now it's better to do it. It's better not just to drop the theme into the WP content folder for themes, because it might have things it's going to do to alter the dashboard and change the way it's set up, which again is one of those things you should be able to do. We'll go into that at the end of the lecture. So the best way to do it is to get the theme, you download it. I bought one from Theme Forest. It's going to give me the zip folder. I unzip it. It's going to be kind of obvious when you're at the folder that's the main theme folder. Okay? You want to make sure, because when you get it, this is kind of annoying. Usually you have to unzip it, and inside of it, there's the theme, and then you have to zip the theme up to make sure that it's only one folder deep in there. Because if it's more than that, you won't be able to install it from the dashboard. I'll do this after the test, but because we're talking about themes now, I just want to make sure you know what I'm talking about. So when you click Add New, you don't have to pick from here. You can actually upload theme right from here. So if you bought a theme, that's where it would go in. Okay, so the theme is a very, this is what made WordPress. I mean, the ability to just flip a switch and change the layout of your site for free for the most part. So this is the way this one is set up. Obviously, I don't have a graphic in the background, so it looks a little different. But you know, for what we were going to do in class, for the time being, I figured we don't need to use the sidebar, so I picked this theme. This is the Luna theme. So you guys should be able to get this looking approximately like this. We'll make changes to it when we come back to class. But a bunch of you on Macs have not been able. Your WordPress is working, everything's fine, but from the dashboard, when you went to try and install this, when you went here, Appearance, Themes, it didn't work. Okay, you went Add New, you got the theme, it downloaded it, but you couldn't do anything with it. You couldn't activate it. This is because of file permissions. So this is where we're going to stop for class today for this first lecture. Next lecture we come back, we're going to have that theme. I'm going to make sure you guys all have that theme, and we're going to start putting stuff into it. We're all going to do it together, so we have kind of the same thing going on. So Mac users, go down to slide, where is it? Slides 21 and 22, okay? Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is try and set up WordPress on your Mac as a whole so that it doesn't constantly bug you about getting permission to do everything. You know how it keeps asking you for a username and password? Is that happening to you on your Macs? It's asking you for a username and password? Okay. And we're going to fix that first, okay? Take this code from the letter I to here. So these, you don't even have these notes. Hang on a second. This is going to be slide 21 and 22. Take what's on slide 21, take this, go into your WP config file. So you got to go back to WordPress, XAMPP, htdocs, WordPress, WP config, and you go to the very bottom of it, right at the end, and you paste that exact code in. Oops, I still had something else on my clipboard. There. You go to the very bottom of it, copy, and you paste that code right at the bottom. Then you save it and close it. And all of a sudden, everything you do in WordPress on a Mac, it won't ask you for permission anymore. Okay, I'll do this again once I post the file after I'm done recording. So that's the first fix. The second fix is going to be done in the terminal, like the other stuff we dealt with. And you basically have to go to every folder and hit it with open permissions. So htdocs is where your main WordPress is. Then you got to get into WordPress. Then you got to get into WP content. And because you're going to want to install themes and plugins, you're going to have to then go here and here. So this chmod R777, that's giving these folders full permission to allow other applications to put stuff in there. So that's why you have to start all the way at the root folder. Do you guys understand what's happening there? Like on your Macs, if you only do these two top level ones, it's not going to work because it still needs the permission to get into the ones before it, right? So as soon as you do that in the terminal, it will work. So you have to go to Spotlight and you search terminal, and then you just put each of these in and hit enter after each of them. And when you go and try and install a theme now, it will work. So because most of you on Macs will have this bit of an issue, I'm going to leave the lecture now at that. You guys can go and pull this out of the notes and make it work, and we'll get your Macs up and running, and we'll be ready for the next class. All right. Okay, I'm back out of the classroom now, and as promised, I was going to have something at the end of this video pertaining to the rearranging of your menu items in the dashboard. So the dashboard area as your workspace is always this light kind of shaded gray area, and then you have your white boxes, and you have all these different modules, and as I've demonstrated, you can hover over them and move them around and stuff. But I had commented in my class that I had at one point moved around this menu, and you could see I showed you that in the middle of the lecture too. You can expand and contract the menu right there, collapse, open back up. Okay, so I have situations with certain sites where I don't want these menu items set up like that, and I knew that I had done this. And of course, this is something we're going to learn about in the next lecture is plugins. There's a specific plugin, and let me pull this up here and bring it into the window. There's a specific plugin made just for this. Okay, there's an admin menu editor plugin. Okay, and in our next lecture, we're going to learn how to download plugins just like this, so we can actually make adjustments within WordPress. So I'll talk a bunch about plugins then, but it can be done just as I thought. And the reason I thought it was that simple is probably because I had purchased a theme that came with the menu editor, so I was able to just move stuff around with kind of assuming that that was just a WordPress feature, but it isn't. You can do it, you just need a plugin for it. So there's your solution, and I might even use this as an example plugin in our next lecture. I will see you then.